and welcome back to Wired for Change, where we look at the people, ideas, and technology reshaping our world. I'm your host, Amy Yee. Today, I'm joined by George Al-Koura, CISO, as well as former Canadian Armed Forces Signals Intelligence Specialist, and someone that I have long admired for his approach to cybersecurity leadership, but also leadership overall. George is currently a CISO in the private sector at Ruby Life, where he has done the hard work of building and picking up and resurrecting in a post-breach environment, which is more than about strengthening controls. It's about rebuilding trust. He is also one of the voices behind a very well-known podcast called Bare Knuckles and Brass Tacks, known lovingly as BKBT, where they look at life not just through a cybersecurity lens, but also through the human impact of technology, which is something that we love to talk about here on Wired for Change. Today, I started off wanting to talk to George about picking up on some of the things that he threw down at his recent keynote at B-Sides Ottawa called Patriotism over Profit. I want to talk a little bit about that, but also about how to balance mission and duty and incentives in today's evolving landscape. What George is excited about, what he might rant about, or what he might want to reflect on over 2025, and what he's doing next. George, thank you so much for joining us today.
Amy, thanks for having me. It's a really nice studio, even though the weather in Ottawa right now is an absolute storm and it's just been post snow dump. So trying to drive anywhere in the city has been extra fun. But you got me to put pants on and actually be an adult and show up for this thing. So I appreciate you hosting me.
Well, thank you for coming out. And, no pressure, George, but this is going to be my last podcast of
Hey,
2025 that I'm
okay.
putting on the air. And I've kind of saved you for last. So really happy to have you here.
It's okay. Everyone can be the run to the litter at some point, It's all good, man.
So, I would love to, for some of the listeners who might not be as familiar with you and your background, there are a few. Could you tell us a little bit about some of the key things that have shaped your perspective today?
Uh, I mean, I don't know. I come from really like a military armed services background, as you kind of mentioned. I'm a graduate of the Royal Military College. I served my time in the forces, and then around 2016, I kind of realized that I want to take my life in a different direction, and I began my career in cyber. Still stay involved with the reserves. Still stay involved with the Canadian Armed Forces through the reserves,
Mhm.
but I started my career off as like a level one security analyst at a big global MSSP with CGI. A lot of people in the city who are still working in the industry now and are in executive levels all kind of started at the same level with me. And, I think back to those times, and it was a little bit really before the world began to change, especially the way it did post COVID. But, it felt a little bit like high school, working in a SOC 24/7, working on site,
Mhm.
dealing with all the issues and the personalities and everything kind of came with that. And it was a fun time. It was a really formative time because I didn't have a STEM background. I studied political science and psychology,
Really?
so that's where my education is. I got in, and not to sound like I cut corners or anything, but through the way most people actually get in, and that's I had a best friend of mine who I'd served with, who actually worked already at the organization, got me a job interview. And I had happened to have a manager at the time, Tim Hersey, who's still around. I saw him at B-Sides as well this year.
Nice.
Tim, good to see you again, bud. You're looking really good. He's lost a lot of weight. Um, he just took a shot on me because he said, "Well, you're a critical thinker and you're a team player, and I think you can learn all the keyboard stuff, but it's just about the intangibles." And that's been kind of a big learning lesson throughout my whole time. And I had really good mentors as well in the army. I should mention that Michel Jean was a really good operational mentor for me. Patrice Gouvernement, these were both like Master Warrant Officer or Master Chief Petty Officer level individuals, and I was lucky to have really good leadership in that time and learn from them, which is I find it's whether you're in a career in cyber or a career in the military or public service, whatever it is, you learn as much looking at how people shouldn't do things
Yes.
than from learning as well from people how they do things and how you want to emulate it. From there, I got my first director shot like within 3 years at a large enterprise for Sagda. It's a local company. And then eventually became the CISO there. And then, took my current job here with Ruby in 2021. So I think for me, it's been a balance of just constantly being in a state of learning and being comfortable being uncomfortable. And I think part of that too is I get really bored easily. Like as a person, that's how I am. So I find if things are going too well for too long, I get complacent, I get bored. And if we always used to make the joke in the army with like what's NATO's worst, or what was it? What's NATO's biggest secret weapon? Untasked privates, right? You have someone who's just like, they're bored, they don't know what to do, they get up to no good. And I kind of fall into that as well, and a little bit. So
So have you been up to no good a lot this past year?
no, this year has been kind of the craziest year in my career. I don't know how all this happened, honestly. Like I don't think I'm any smarter than anyone else. Like really, like I do work hard. I do get obsessively mission focused. I think that that's one thing is when I have an objective in my mind, like I will complete that objective. I'll run through walls to get whatever I want done, but I will get it done. But other than that, like I'm not, there's like way smarter people around. There's way more brilliant programmers. There's way more brilliant hackers. I think like to go from getting that SANS award in December for our show, like last December, then getting that, Canadian CISO of the Year thing with CyberX, that was really cool. Getting that CISOs Connecting, that North American award was cool. And then getting to travel to all these different places, getting invited to all these different organizations and groups and stuff, a lot of like American presence. I'm in America almost every month, basically. It's been a privilege, but it's been a ride, and still maintaining my operations at my day job where things have been busy as ever. And we're constantly trying to figure out this AI implementation question while running our environment, while keeping budgets tight. And then obviously I moonlight at a law firm with my friends Vanessa and Sean and Elodie with Sable Law, who are actually a sponsor at the B-Sides event. So shout out to them. And then doing my own like startup work as well, just trying to be a CTO and learn what that job is and build a cloud environment from scratch and work on architecting an entire proprietary solution. And I think for the last 6 months, I've slept on average 2 to 3 hours a night trying to do all this stuff. But I live with a sense of purpose, and that makes me feel happy. And I don't mind being tired, but I feel like my day has a reason to exist. I've had periods in my life where maybe I didn't feel such a strong sense of purpose, and I had all the time in the world to rest and play around, and I was miserable. So it's a real privilege to kind of be where I'm at.
Sounds like you couldn't possibly be bored right
No,
now.
not right now.
You also, I learned recently, George, that you also find time to mentor other people now in your spare time, I guess. I love mentorship stories. I wonder if you could tell us a story about a mentor who, really, whose impact really kind of stayed with you, or that you think about, or you've thought about recently.
Yeah, to be honest with you, I kind of always think back to my second mentor, Patrice, or Patty, as we call him, because Patty really kind of taught me about like how to be in operations, and Patty taught me about security and taught me about security intelligence, and he had a lot of worldly like Cold War type experience, and he helped build the Reserve 291 trade like within the Canadian Armed Forces. Him and Andy Chiquette, who rest his soul, Andy Chiquette recently passed away last year. I was actually at his funeral. That was really sad. But you know, to see someone so motivated and to believe in something, to fight against the bureaucracy, to actually make it happen, and when it happened, to be part of the core training of getting people enabled to take the baton from him and carry it forward and build a real legacy. I really appreciate kind of the personality it takes to pull that off because it's tough, and I think it's one of those things like not beyond just a personal mentor, but like I look at like other leadership influencers. I look at stuff like you look at like an Alex Hormozy type thing, and I really like his whole statement on, you know, you really have to get used to being okay to cheering for yourself when the auditorium's empty, right? Like
Mhm.
when no one's in the crowd watching, you have to be your biggest supporter. And so when I saw Patty kind of doing his thing in our early years, and you'd see him constantly trying to keep our program alive, keep us funded, keep the trade going forward, and keep our training going forward, and work with standards and work with different shops and keep alignment within the force's overall strategic plan. And this is just one guy doing this, right? It's really just an example to me of what the art of the possible is with one truly motivated individual, right? So that from a mentorship standpoint, I always kind of like give a nod to him, and he kind of showed like what's strategically possible. And then when I talk about Michel Jean, he was my mentor when I worked in strategic signals intelligence within operations at Elitrum. And I mean, I can't really get into too many detailed things because all that was very high classified times. But I can say that from an operations standpoint, he was the guy. I mean, he was the guy who, he went through a lot in Afghanistan, went through a lot, personally and physically. And, he was able to kind of show the way that the business is supposed to be done. And, I'm thankful because I got to watch how he runs a team and how he runs a team of very diverse personnel because, he's running a regional targets team where we're all ethnically from different backgrounds. We all speak different languages. We all come from different cultures, but he had to keep us aligned or in line to stay aligned with our overall mission. So I kind of really enjoy thinking back to the lessons he showed just by, I'd say, being more the type of guy who listens more than he talks.
Mhm.
And that's kind of like where his key strength was.
Mhm. Wow, what a precious gift it is to get a chance to work with side by side with people like that.
Yeah.
It's it's interesting. I was at an event a couple of years ago, and it was with a graduating class of engineers at Carleton, and I was talking to a bunch of women. I was saying, "Well, what are you looking for in your first job coming out of school, kind of
Yeah.
thing?" And it was all about kind of the job. And what I said to them was, think about also who you want to work with. Like the who, like who you get a chance to meet, who you get a chance to work with is kind of more important than that first job or exactly, what your role is going to be coming out of
Mm.
university because it's so key. So thanks for sharing that. And the impact that one person can have is so important. Um, I want to go to your speech a while ago about patriotism over profit, where I think you're looking to inspire more people really around the idea of patriotism and what that means maybe in today's landscape. Tell us why that's what you wanted to talk about during this keynote.
Sorry, I'm just getting over a cold. I think what was the important thing for me was when I had that audience, realizing that you had public sector people there, you had commercial leadership there, you had academia there, you had students, you had practitioners, you had sellers, you had everyone there, like a little microcosm of the whole industry was in that room. What I wanted to articulate was that we we are not in the same situation that we think we've always been in. Right? Times have changed. And we have to actually acknowledge that times have changed. And it behooves us to understand that now Canadian national interests are at risk. And, it's not just about the typical external adversaries that we face, but now we have risk from, organizations and people who we would normally consider to be our allies. As a result of that, I think we have to look at how we conduct our business and we have to look at what contracts we're choosing to take on, what vendors we're choosing to actually work with, what technologies we're choosing to build, the markets we're choosing to play in. And I just don't see enough people functionally really taking that letter to their heart and actually acting upon it. I mean, a lot of organizations are still running business as usual.
Mhm.
And a lot of people are still going business as usual to try to work with, certain elements of organizations and personnel outside of Canada that may not necessarily have Canada's best interests in mind. And I think, unfortunately, we live in this time now because we're rushing so headlong into AI enablement all over the place. And we're doing so haphazardly, at risk to our own data privacy and our control. It becomes really a national security issue when certain large enterprises, Canadian enterprises, do business and certain things with certain organizations where now our national data sovereignty becomes, in question. And I don't know about you, but I think for me, I took an oath to defend this country. And even if I'm out of the uniform, that oath is for life, right? So that's really where it comes down to. And I think a lot of my friends who are veterans who I serve with, who are now in the cyber industry, they'll tell you the exact same thing. The sense of duty never left us. And I think now, trust me, I want everyone to make money. I'm in business. I want to make as much money as I can so I can retire as early as I can. I am fully transparent about that. But I don't want to do so at the cost of harming Canadians or Canadian national integrity.
What do you think could happen if not enough people sort of see that there's a duty there or see the importance of challenging their current ways of doing business?
Well, I think what might happen is we get taken advantage of, because I think what happens is we can be bought off, right? We see fiscal opportunities, we see business opportunities, we see, you know, the ultimate carrots just waved in front of our face of everything that we individually could ever want. But if we don't consider our neighbors, if we don't consider our families, if we don't consider what type of Canada we're handing off to our children now as we make these critical decisions, particularly if you are working in a critical infrastructure field or a supply chain for it, I think you're doing a disservice to the future generations of Canadians. And unfortunately, with the way the world is and the timeline of human development and what we're dealing with now, both in terms of technology and geopolitics, the time for decisive action is now. We in business, especially executive leaders in business, need to decide what side are they on? What side is their organization going to be on? Are you on Team Canada or not? It's a simple question. And if you're not on Team Canada, that's okay. That's your prerogative. But then it's our prerogative to not want to do business with you. And like that's where I'm coming from.
Mhm. How can people sort of know what to do? So things are moving very quickly,
Yes.
right? Faster than many people can understand, and things have kind of taken on a life of their own, right?
Yeah.
Which is why the trajectory and seeing, what lies ahead is so important.
Yeah.
So, even if someone was to say, I'm on Team Canada, but they might not make all the right moves, right? So, how do people prepare to try to make the right moves? What should they be thinking about?
Well, there's two things to start. First of all, no one knows everything,
Mhm.
right? Educate yourself. Constantly educate yourself. You have to make time to read and inform yourself. And I'm not just talking about, tweets or truth socials or whatever it is. I'm talking about read actual editorials, read white papers, read technical reports, read books, right? Like it's funny because I know that there's an argument to be made about where the economy is going and how, you know, now a lot of the hyper rich are telling people focus more on AI skills and programming development and work on that to get a seat in the workforce. But then behind the scenes, executives are focused on philosophy and focused on these bigger picture concepts that help them get to where they are. And there's something to be said about class warfare. And this is not the right podcast for that. I'll happily meet at the pub and we can talk all about that. But I think the bigger issue is that you have to take this position that if you have the privilege to be in the tech sector at this day and age, in this time particularly, if you're not the type of person that gets genuinely curious about what is happening, not only in terms of what's happening in terms of new innovation, but what's happening in terms of the geopolitical implications of those innovations, where the money is going, who's getting the money, what is it being used for, where are investments happening, right? You have to understand for yourself the big picture as best as you can, as much as your capacity allows, right? And if you don't have the time for to paint a whole picture, you have to start building the networks of people that you can trust that can help give you that picture through their perspectives. Like a big part of my proficiency and power is that I have an extremely large, very well placed network. Like I think, outside of a handful of organizations, there's not many CISO or CIO level individuals across any shop anywhere in North America that I can't get a hold of through one connection or another, if they're not already directly connected to me. And I see a lot of really important discourse happens in a lot of these group chats that I'm part of, and a lot of these groups that I'm part of. And these are the things that kind of influence like where I go and what I do and how I should do it. And, where are the risks? at the same time, you kind of have to build the same thing for yourself. It's kinda like, when you're running a security program or whatever, or you're even at home, you get interested in cyber threat intelligence, you want to build your own program, right? Like, you want to find your own core sources, like your own key sources. You want to have a collection on those sources regular. So you want to have like a tweet deck that has like, 20 or 30 different channels open of like different particular users or accounts that you're following that give you information. You want to have some kind of dark web access that can actually get you into certain forums or into certain communities that'll give you more direct information as to what's happening at the ground level. You want to have certain writers that you follow. You want to have certain publications that you follow. You want to have this entire information program for yourself to be able to pull certain things out when you need to get them pulled out, or just in general to be able to inform yourself what is happening right now. Because we can't just trust any sort of media on face value anymore.
Hmm.
Our own critical thinking and our own ability to discern between truth and reality, or as best as we can, that's what's going to actually predicate our ability to be successful, not only as a country or as leaders in an organization, but for ourselves on an individual, professional, and personal level. So I think leaning into the fact that you have to be absolutely thirsty and curious for more information and be constantly critical. Always ask why. Always ask why. I ask why for everything. That's like, my father passed away in '06, and it's one of the biggest life lessons for me was he said, never ever accept anything as what you see it. Always ask why. Whether you don't do it out loud, ask yourself, why is something the way it is? And if you can't quite figure that out, then that's something that you have to kind of scratch the surface of, because unfortunately, we live in a time where you can't trust people's intents on face value anymore at all.
Yeah.
So you kind of have to understand what's the game they're trying to play to be able to try to position yourself in a better spot 5 to 10 moves ahead instead of being a sucker to whatever their ploy is.
I think that's a very important point for anybody to take into account. And that whole idea of judgment and being able to judge sort of what is real and what's not is something that is becoming more and more precious as a skill and as a perspective. I want to go back to CISOs for a second and ask you if, this whole idea of patriotism and duty, do you think that this hits CISOs differently in some way because of what they're able to affect? Or are most CISOs just kind of really stuck and constrained within, their own organizations?
I think most are stuck and constrained, to be honest with you, because I think they don't really have the leeway to be able to think on those terms.
Mhm.
You have to have the freedom and the ability to, have enough trust within your organization that you're not fully controlled, right? That you're able to actually explore, well, I get that this supplier is from here, but can we find a Canadian alternative? Is that possible?
Mhm.
Right. And if it's not possible, okay, cool. But am I at least, or is my organization at least open to me exploring that thought? Is my organization open to me exploring consulting help from Canadians instead of from, some other G7 country? And I think it comes down to a lot of smaller decisions that a lot of us make. Because yes, there's a lot of CISOs that have a public light and they have a public brand and all this, and that's great for them. I've certainly enjoyed the benefits of it, but a lot of CISOs don't have that privilege. A lot of organizations prefer their CISOs stay quiet. So you kind of have to play within the bounds of your employer. So then you have to determine what that game is so that you can successfully win and contribute and satisfy your employer while at the same time staying true to your values. If your value set is, I will put Canada first.
Do you have any advice for, CEOs and leadership teams in terms of working with their CISOs to create space for these conversations and why they should do that?
Yeah, I think it comes down to actually having your CISO at the right seat at the table.
Mhm.
And like that's just not for the sake of these kinds of conversations, but in general, your security leader should be someone who feels comfortable speaking to every single person across your organization. Like there should be no silos when it comes to security, because if you have a silo where security doesn't have visibility, they have no influence, they have no comms, you have risk. You have a massive insider risk. So if you're allowing your CISO to be able to address those issues across your entire organization, then you should also allow that CISO to have an opinion that's worth consideration at the executive table. And I'm not saying don't put them under a CIO or something if it makes more sense. Sure. But even within that, like as a senior leader, they still need to be at that table. I mean, have them, sure, work through whatever that CIO or chief legal or whoever they're working under, but just make sure that they're not disregarded. Just make sure they're not abused, and just make sure that you're not setting them up to just to be nothing but a patsy, right? Because I've also seen that situation as well, where you have the role, but you have no enablement to actually do anything. And then when something goes wrong, well, why didn't you fix that? Why didn't you stop that? You gave me no budget, you gave me no team, you gave me no power. How am I going to stop anything?
Mhm.
Right? So it really depends on how seriously you take the office or how big you take that role within the organization, and how much freedom you allow them to exist and to demonstrate their leadership across different verticals.
Do you see any sign of this changing at all, like based on conversations you've had with CISOs?
I mean, I think I see a lot of CISOs being more effective.
Mhm.
I think the narrative is changing a little bit, but across industry, it's tough because you are dealing with owners who, especially who, if they're private equity owned, they have to satisfy their shareholders. And it's not that they don't maybe necessarily want not like it's not that they don't want to listen to you necessarily. It's just that they have to prioritize making money more than anything else. And if what you're talking about isn't helping the organization make money, there's not a lot of room for that conversation. And so it's hard to frame something like this where you're talking about patriotism, you're talking about, our selection and this or that or the other thing. You really have to frame that logic behind, hey, it's to the benefit of our business that we choose build and buy in Canada as a supplier option, that we choose this as a partner option. But again, if you also as a CISO don't understand board language, don't understand financial language or how a business strategically comes up with its concepts, you're also doing a disservice to yourself because you're not even equipped with the right words and the right thinking to be able to have that conversation, even if you were given the opportunity.
Okay, so let's follow this along. We've looked at, the role of security with respect to business within organizations, right? Let's look at the ecosystem now, across Canada. And, I'd love to learn more about how you see kind of the opportunities and for working together differently, for example. And I almost don't want to say the word collaboration because it's something that's overly used and then you don't always get
But
sort of
do you
collaboration
mean like as CISOs or as organizations?
as organizations, but when you're blending sort of the cyber landscape and the business and the competitive kind of landscape.
Well, again, like it starts off with communication. Like the concept that I had in that keynote was we just need to have a Congress or a type of organization where there is an opportunity for regular communications to be had,
Mhm.
right? Where, you know, 2 to 4 times a year, we all actually get together, either like in a hybrid setting in person or we'll dial in, and you have all 12 provincial CISOs or whoever's in charge of the function in any respective province or territory, plus the federal CISO actually being the person in charge who has some empowerment from the federal government to put some teeth behind policy enforcement. And then you have like we'll say the top one representatives from the top 100 enterprises in Canada in terms of size and in terms of ARR. And then you have like let's say special contributions or industry designates who are folks who are R&D or producing or creating technology or services that are specifically helpful at a national scale. So you might have a small shop, but maybe your small shop actually helps build radar systems for our naval vessels.
Mhm.
You probably should have a seat at that table,
Mhm.
right? Like things like that. We have all these relevant personnel that are in this communication, that are in this kind of Congress or community that we build. And what it allows for is the federal government and its provincial partners to then validate not only the mandates that they're all trying to impose, but to create some form of harmonized governance, right? Because I think part of what we lack as a national supply chain is governance. I mean, there was the CAN Cybersecurity program, which I think had a lot of good intent behind it,
Mhm.
but it lacked teeth and it lacked implementation. So I think we need to take that and learn from that lesson because we need some kind of national level policy that all the provinces buy into that, I'm not going to say can be imposed on all businesses, but can be mandated so that all businesses have a basic framework to operate off of in a secure manner across our entire digital supply chain. And it begins with communication. It begins with breaking down the walls of, well, who do I even talk to if I'm a DG level person or if I'm a colonel in charge of this thing or whatever? Like, who can I talk to in industry? I don't know anyone. Or am I even authorized to? Right? There's a lot of organizations where they don't even let some of their management leadership personnel talk to people externally. How are you going to defend any kind of supply? How are you going to defend your organization in general if you're not allowing for threat sharing or if you're not allowing for outreach to different organizations potentially across your supply chain, or they might be competitors but they're in your same space so they deal with the same problems. Security needs to be something that gets put above competition economically, um, because we are trying to defend our national interests. And that means that if you're running a Canadian company in one space and I'm running a Canadian company from another province in the same space, maybe we compete on certain things, maybe work together on other things. It's really important that we are able to protect one another, right? Particularly when it comes to, what we're doing with these sensitive contracts or engagements. So we have to kind of put the competitive politics aside and try to figure out a way where we can all speak to one another. Because I think the to fix this, the start has to be communication. And that's where I'd say the first big step is creating a vehicle so that organizations can communicate with one another.
Could you help us understand a little bit more what the experience is today, maybe from personal
Yeah.
experience or just what you've heard? Because some people might assume that there is this communication today or this level of communication or coordination today. They may not realize what it actually looks like and what we could achieve.
Well, I think we have some vehicles or some occasional events where it can happen,
Mhm.
but we don't have something steady state. We don't have something that the federal government has signed off on in partnership with its provincial partners that is almost institutional, right? And Triple CS needs to play a huge factor in this as well because that's a huge part of their mandate. But we need something that is known, that is institutionalized, that becomes a solid bedrock that we build national coordination off of. Everything right now is piecemeal. You might have an occasional good conversation or an occasional agreement here, an MOU there. There's nothing that's long term consistent that can actually be spread and it can be counted upon for, potentially generations. We have individual piecemeal initiatives that last to deal with a certain problem or a certain opportunity, but it doesn't really help the entirety of the team. And again, if we're not talking to each other, are we really a team? Right? I'm just trying to get us to a place where we have a singular platform that we can communicate with each other via, and that allows us to take those communications and take the insights passed through and turn them into quantifiable action that address policy mandates.
Mhm.
Because again, we are a democratic government. We get our policies from our elected officials, and that legislation turns into actual departmental policy, which then turns into corporate policy, one would hope. Right. So we have to address that chain. And to address that chain and influence it, we need a means of communicating and unifying on certain issues so that government can have a whole of industry perspective before it enacts anything.
And do you think we need to do that maybe faster than we've tried to do these things in the past?
Yeah, honestly, I think we need to get this thing set up as soon as possible, 'cause just to begin the conversation and to begin figuring out from a policy and a legislative mandate approach what needs to happen, what laws need to get pushed through. Like ultimately, information security or network security, because we're so digitized now, it needs to become an electoral issue. Your ability as a politician, your knowledge, if you can't help drive management of it, you shouldn't be elected. Not in this day and age, not in this economy.
Mhm. You outlined a number. One of the things I really liked about your speech was that you outlined a number of kind of next steps, and you said that you didn't have to be the person to do it, but
Yeah.
that there were definitely some next steps there. Would you be able to mention a few of those kind of next steps for us, and also, whether or not there's anything we should be learning from other countries who have more of a foundation established?
Well, yeah, I think, we can look at America and what they've done with CISA, right? And that's kind of like where I'm trying to get to is where you can look at like the way they have their DNI, like their Department of National Intelligence, and how they kind of have alignment between all their intelligence agencies, and then how they're all supporting kind of like the America First thing. And then a lot of our thinking kind of needs to mirror that a little bit because we have to kind of put Canada first, which means alignment of certain critical public safety organizations, as well as law enforcement, as well as the commercial enterprises, and then or sorry, I already said mentioned law enforcement, commercial enterprises and academia.
Mhm.
So that's kind of one thing is actually getting everyone talking to each other, or able to talk to each other, and then getting everyone kind of rowing the boat in the same direction, right? In coordination with one another, making sure that we're helping one another and not actually hampering each other. Some of the other things I was just thinking about though when I was talking about that, action plan,
Mhm.
it's really, contributing to that. Like, and organizations need to step up and be willing to contribute to it. And one thing that could be very easy to up our national capabilities is with some of the provincial or federal security operations centers, having our analysts, having our commercial analysts get periods of secondment where you go from your commercial organization and you're you know lent to a government shop where you're working at that government shop and you're learning the methodologies of how government does its protection and you're learning how it can best serve your organization and vice versa, and you're also contributing to the government's mission without having to cost additional resource to the government, so you're respecting taxpayer spend,
Mm.
like, because ultimately with everything I was saying, like, I always keep taxpayer value acutely in mind.
Yeah.
So if we're doing this, we're actually improving our analysts, we're getting them more training, our commercial organizations are getting back better versions of the analysts they send out, and our government is benefiting from a constant pipeline of analysts who are working in public and private sector, public through them. And they have the referent experience and they have the networks, so they learn the organization. So when they go back to their shops and a problem comes up and they need to call up somebody at, whatever public safety or law enforcement organization, they already have a frame of reference and a relationship. I mean, these are very simple things that could easily be done. It's a contracting issue, and it's an issue of political will and capital will, I guess, if you want to look at it from a financial standpoint. But again, I don't know if any organization would ever actually do this, but these are the types of things that do make it easier for us to move the ball forward. And I think, you see it in other countries because you'll see it in Britain, you'll see it in Australia, and even in some shops in America, you'll see it there as well.
Mhm, mhm. Now, it would be amazing even just to get, a few organizations to model it, for others to show, what this could look like and what's possible, even outside of, the current systems and frameworks kind of thing, right?
And honestly, you want to talk about like ITBs, right? I remember when I was working in Agda, it was all about, what ITBs could we get through this RFP, and you're talking about tax benefits, and you're looking at, again, the build and buy Canadian thing. Well, there should be some key benefit to a commercial organization that contributes an analyst or contributes a team
Mhm,
to a public sector shop or capability. And I think we have to look at, okay, well, how do we make this worthwhile for commercial enterprises in a fair manner that respects the taxpayer? But then how do we make sure as well that government organizations that will be dealing with these seconded analysts or specialists, that they're getting the most out of their time, right? And so that becomes a thing where we have to look at operational leadership and how we're actually building out those programs and where we're placing them and what we're doing. But as a core concept and principle, we should be trying to utilize all the resources that are qualified and employed as best as we can.
mhm.
And then trying to figure out how we continue to develop more and more of those resources so that we can continue our pipeline flowing.
Do you think we need to do a better job at identifying them as well, or do you think we've got a handle on identifying them?
Oh yeah, we certainly need to identify them better. I mean, at least even asking people for self-identification, like who's interested in doing this,
Mhm,
who wants to do this, who wants to step up their career. And I think, part of it too is we have to kind of burst this bubble of the security industry staffing. Was it the I don't know what they call it, the supposedly we have millions of job openings, but we can't seem to
no one
fill
filled
them.
them, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a lie. That's an absolute lie,
Mhm,
right? We have a system where we don't want to invest in people. We don't want to invest in training them. We don't want to do paid co-ops. We don't want to do any of the things that normally people in the technical field would do to get gainfully employed
mhm,
because we don't want to spend the money on it.
mhm.
That has to change, right?
I love what you're saying. You're pointing out about the systems problem, and I mean that system is kind of self-reinforcing. It's very hard to like break down, that system that exists today, but it is a problem.
I think it's a huge problem. I think we have to That sucks because like I don't like I want to be honest about it. Like I don't want to be offensive to
Right.
people, but it's just there's a certain class of ownership and wealth in Canada that always put their own interests above everything else. They put greed above everything else. They put EBITDA above everything else. And I think it's hard to get the right kind of, if not forward investment, if at least the organizational commitment to focus on these types of initiatives over pure money making initiatives.
Mhm.
And I think until we lose that attitude that we're going to put ourselves first and our profit first before everything else, we're just not we're not going to be in a condition where we can actually do any of this.
Mhm.
And I really just, I'm not saying everyone's like this, but I haven't seen too many people in a business ownership type position who are talking more about how do we help protect Canada versus, well, how do I make sure that I'm maximizing profitability quarter over quarter? And I think that's a huge part of the problem. And no one likes calling out people that they aspire to be like, especially when it comes to money.
Yeah.
So, but I don't know. I don't know. You tell me if I'm wrong, but that's what I've seen in my experience.
No, no, I'd agree. It's a hard thing. I mean, we talk about, stepping out of our comfort zone. For other people, it's hard for them to step outside of their comfort zone as well, right?
Exactly. And that's really tough.
So it's tough, and there are a lot of tensions out there to manage, and one of them being miscommunication and disinformation. Sorry, misinformation and disinformation as well, which makes it even harder to kind of figure out what everyone's motivations are and who's kind of trying to play what game, right?
Yeah, that's the other thing too is you have to kind of assess things on a person to person basis,
Yeah,
and it's not just what they say and what they do, but like again, not to get weird about it, but when I talk to someone,
yeah.
I really sit down with them. I try to get a read of them. I try to get the how do they make me feel? What's my
Mhm.
intuitive sense with you? I trust my intuition, and it's very very important to me. And if I feel like you're a liar, or you're just pushing snake oil, or you're really just doing this for your own self interest, I'm not really going to want to work with you too much because I know how it's going to end.
Mhm.
And so I think we have to do more work to work in good faith, which is kind of a big ask for people. Is are you actually trying to do this for the better of Canada? Or again, is this really just another way to end around greater profitability for yourself?
Mhm.
Right? Like what's the point of why you're doing this or why you want to support this? Because if it's pure, if it's something pure where it's just like, hey, I want to do this because it's for the best of my country and for the best of our industry, and it's going to make sure that we could drive longevity and success for Canadians well after I'm done doing this. I think that's kind of where your head should be, but we don't have enough people convinced to be there yet.
It's a really interesting point that you make around intuition and trust, I think, as well.
Thanks.
And that's something that I've been touching on a lot recently with the podcast. And I think in a couple of weeks ago, we touched on Jack Kitts, who was formerly the CEO of the Auto Hospital, saying like integration moves at the speed of trust. And that was repeated by its CEO at Kempville, Frank Vassalo, as well. And it was just an interesting thought to me because we need to integrate in new and better ways and build systems that are new and kind of better than what we have today. And trust is such a big part of that. And we talked about judgment right now, just now, and we talked about the relationships that you were talking about building through secondments as well, just better interconnective tissue between people and organizations, between private and public sector kind of thing, right? And a lot of it does come down to your own developed sense of judgment or intuition. Um, Intuition is something that is a big sort of muscle for you, it sounds like. How did you even develop like your sense of intuition? Is that something that just came naturally to you? For some people, it kind of feels different. I'm just curious about that.
I think we all have it, and we all have that quote unquote spidey sense, but
Mm.
you gotta learn to listen to it,
Yeah.
right? And I found in my life more often than not when I've listened to my intuition, it's been right.
Mhm.
And when I've, chosen not to listen to it, it's usually gotten me burned.
Yeah.
And I say that professionally and personally.
Yeah.
So I think you go through that enough years and enough times, you figure out like, hey, like maybe my subconscious is actually a lot smarter than I think it is. And maybe if my subconscious is telling me like, hey, this person's a really not a good idea, or this thing I'm about to do is not a good idea, this cliff I'm about to jump off of is probably not a good idea. And maybe I should probably not jump off that cliff or get in a partnership with that person or date that person or do this thing. Um, and I think when people don't listen to themselves and they don't have introspection, which is probably the bigger, you want to talk about how do you train it?
Yeah.
Be introspective.
Mm-hmm.
Like think about like, why do I feel this way about this thing? Why did I do that? Why did I say that? Right? I play back my own conversations all the time.
Yeah.
Like to a point that I probably get it, but it contributes to me having anxiety or just like, oh, I said the wrong thing or I sounded dumb or blah, blah, blah. But the fact is that if you're not introspective, you don't know yourself well enough to be able to trust the feelings that your mind gives you when you interact with things and people in your world that you need to figure out quickly if whether or not I should trust this or that or the other thing. So I think introspection and really committing time to working on your own introspection and meditating and listening to yourself and being able to be attuned to yourself naturally and quickly,
Mm-hmm.
that's the skill. Like
It is.
instinct comes from that.
Yeah, it is a skill. So I'm always curious about how people develop it and use it in kind of their daily life. And as a CISO, do you think it's an important skill for CISOs?
Extremely. Yeah. I got to make quick calls.
Yeah, yeah,
I have to take complex issues and, get whatever information is available to me from however many people can give it to me and quickly make an effective and correct decision.
mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying I'm always correct, but if I'm not, it has to be something that's a minimal loss. It can't be like, I've missed the mark completely. It's got to be like, oh, well, you missed it by, one or two fingers on the target, not
Yeah.
you hit like the deer that's walking in the background,
Right, right.
right? To kind of copy an allegory from shooting. But it's the same thing from a policy standpoint where like if I'm looking at doing an AI governance policy and I say, oh, well, no one can use any AI anywhere. Well, that's great because your devs are probably gonna want to quit if they're not yelling at you the whole time. And your board and your CEO have been reading these amazing articles about all the productivity AI can do is now looking and being like, why aren't you letting us do this?
Right. Yeah.
You're hampering our business and all this. So it's like you kind of have to know you have to know how to adjust your thinking to address the risk concerns that you feel. Because again, intuition in the eyes of a CISO means risk.
Yeah.
Like, where am I feeling risk? Where do I see the risk? And so you have to figure out, like, is the risk real? Is it quantifiable? Is it quantifiable enough for me to push back? Or should I just make note of it and let it go and go forward and see what happens? Right. And these are all questions you kind of have to train yourself. And as you get more experience and you go through these things more time, you get a lot better at like making the right call and then knowing what to do and who to contact and how to make it work.
Sure. It gets easier, but I mean, do you still ever get decision fatigue, even with anything that?
All the time.
Yeah.
All the time. All the time. Like
Mhm.
I get like, especially this year and with, how blessed things have been with
Mhm.
just being busy and stuff so much. I get exhausted sometimes and I get, decisions come across my desk and the way my mind works, if you ever actually get to know me, like my mind naturally always figures out what's happening 5 to 10 steps ahead. It's just how it works. Right. So oftentimes like I'm seeing or foreseeing issues or things well before anyone else. And I often don't say anything because people are like, well, no, that's not a problem, blah, blah, blah. And then you're like, no, just give it time. Just wait a little bit. And then it kind of happens the way that I predict it. So when I'm dealing with an issue and people should know kind of what my opinion is going to be on something already. And they ask me anyway. And I'm just like, this is the 12th fire I've had to solve that day. And I'm like, I'm exhausted and I don't want to be nice necessarily. And I don't want to have to listen to all sides of this thing. I know what the answer is. I know what the right answer is or what the most risk averse answer is. So I'm just like, okay, well, I'm just going to cut to the chase and this is what we're going to do.
Mhm.
Right. And so if ever I get curt with any decision process, it's because I'm probably exhausted
Mhm.
and I kind of know what the most likely safest answer is. And that's what I'm going to go with. And you have to convince me that that's not it,
Mhm. Mhm.
which is not normally how I am because I want to figure out usually business enablement and I want to get all perspectives and I want to hear like, how do we make this work for everyone? But I know when the fatigue hits, it's just what's the thing that's the most risk averse thing because I don't want to freaking deal with this tomorrow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure. For sure. Well, and for anyone who functions at this level on a regular basis, you must have, ways to recharge as well. Can I ask you what one of your ways to recharge is?
I mean, that's, I fight at a competitive level. That's like I'm a gym rat.
Nice.
That's what I do. I enjoy cooking. I enjoy making really healthy food. I enjoy training 2 3 times a day when there's time. I haven't had much time lately. Like I'm lucky to just get one workout in. But I really do take pride in like myself and keeping my body sharp. I think having a sharp mind or having a sharp body is the key to maintaining a sharp mind,
Mhm.
and it helps give you that sense of resilience to combat against fatigue, to combat against a lot of the stresses that you go through. Um, but yeah, I mean, day to day, like I said, I do that. It also is just CISO life can be very frustrating, and dealing with people very frustrating. And when you have a competitive outlet, like that's another thing too with me is I'm an extremely competitive person.
Mhm.
Like it doesn't matter if it's a sport like fighting or if it's a team sport like rugby or football or if we're playing cards or playing chess. I want to beat you always.
Well, there's fair warning to anyone who's
Yeah.
going to play a game with you the next while, George.
Yeah. But, I think having ways to kind of have healthy outlets for that energy. And then when I'm not doing any of that, to be honest with you, I'm at home. I got my 2 dogs. I got a really calm life. Or I try to maintain a calm life outside of work life. And, I have a lot of really good friends, and I try to like we were talking about this before the recording. I maintain friends who have nothing to do with tech,
Mhm.
who don't really care about any of this, and keep issues and conversation really blue collar,
Yeah,
and that makes me feel normal and real. And
yeah.
I think that's really
Grounded,
important.
as we
Yeah,
say.
grounded. Yes, thank you for
You're
words.
welcome.
I can read, believe it or not, just not today. But yeah, being grounded, I think it's really important, and just unplugging. Like it's funny, you see memes about it, but you see like people who don't work in tech are like, I have smart systems everywhere, and like you'll see like the caption on the other side being like someone who works in tech be like, I don't even have a phone. I don't. There's nothing that plugs in,
It's
right?
true.
And I'm kind of in the same way where I like my dream when I want to retire is literally just to live off a beach in southern Cyprus and run a bar and a gym,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
nothing to do with tech at all.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear you. Like, I do things that are very, like, anti-tech, like, for in my spare time. Like, so I used to deal with a lot of ambiguity, like,
Uh,
right? Constant ambiguity. And that's fine. And I
yes.
can embrace that. But that means that in my spare time, I recharged by doing things that were super linear, where there were no
Yes.
decisions, like dot to dots and paint by numbers kind of thing, because there are no decisions.
Oh, like I had so I
And
had
it's not technical. It's like there's no technology
well, that's why I have
involved.
fun. Like I did like ballroom dance for like 2 years.
Did you
Yeah,
really?
and
No
that was
way.
it was really good footwork for fighting actually. But like when you're doing dance, like it's just like you're with an instructor, and depending on whatever the style is, or a bunch of styles we did in that program, like you're just following someone else's instructions.
Mhm.
And all that matters is that you hit those instructions, that you hit
Totally.
those steps.
You're
And
told
so
what to do.
that's it. You're told to do, and like, it's funny, like, because executive leadership is what it is. Like, if I had an ideal world, I would have like 2 EAs and a PA, and just like someone would tell me, hey, you're talking to this person at this time about this thing, and you got to move from here to here and be there for like my whole life would be mapped out
Yeah.
on my working time. And the only thing I'd have to deal with is basically just like, yes, no, yes, no. Like that's
Yeah.
in my dream world. Someone else already has that taken care of, and I literally just have to show up.
I hear you. I hear you. I hear you. Wouldn't that be nice, right? For a little while. It'd be like a vacation.
It'd be the dream, yes.
I did ballroom dancing too.
I know. I get,
Yes.
yeah. You look like you did ballroom dancing.
Oh,
Oh,
well, thank
it
you.
was-
I also started ballet when I was like 25, but that's a whole other
oh,
story.
wow, that's awesome. Okay, that's cool.
Yeah, like just because I didn't start young doesn't mean I can't start
Oh,
now,
of course,
right? Kind of
obviously.
thing, right? So let's talk about the podcast a little
Yeah.
bit, right? So you started that like how many years ago now?
I think when George and I start that,
Yeah.
like, Jesus, going on almost 4 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Still putting out episodes every week.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, it's nothing as fancy. Like, I think this show is amazing. This is super
Thank you.
cool. We try to keep our show relatively simple because he lives in Virginia.
Mhm.
Um, but to me, it was always just an outlet. It was when we started the show. We started the show because George was trying to sell me when he was at one of his past employers, and I get inundated by these cold approaches, whether it's phone calls, LinkedIn messages, emails, blah blah, blah all that stuff. And George was smart because he kind of went the route of like he engaged me a lot on stuff I'd comment on or that kind of thing, and we kind of have a back and forth. And then eventually he told me to come down to Black Hat that summer. It's like, hey, if you're at Black Hat, come out to this event that we have or whatever. Excuse me. And so I went to the event, and it was like the end of the day, and I had been walking around trade show floor with my CIO, and I was absolutely exhausted. Like, if you ever been to these things, it is a drain on energy. It's a drain on attention. And I think I showed up with like 15 minutes left in the event, and I was just like, hey, do you want to just like get a drink and talk? And so we got a drink, we talked, and I was just like, cool. So like, and this is kind of how I always am. Like, I don't want to waste your time, and I know you don't want to waste my time. So just like send me your documentation, give me a white paper, give me the high levels of what the thing is. I'll give it to my team leads, and if they like it, we'll go forward and have an engagement and a conversation. You see a demo. If they don't really like it, I'll let you know, and at least then you can kind of let that die, right? And I was just very, very transparent and forthright with him, and I think he kind of appreciated that. And we both just kind of like reflected on how exhausting the security industry was, like in this post SaaS 2.0 kind of era, where it's just like you're still dealing with these CROs who are trying to push people to make like 1,000 calls a week kind of thing. And you're just like, but why? You're trying to force me to have all these engagements and interactions where there's no trust built, where there's nothing authentic done, where I'm not actually learning what this client's problem statements are. But, because they have revenue numbers they need to hit, they need to push that onto their people, and it creates kind of like a bit of a toxic approach to doing business. And so after that conversation, I think George and I, we were talking a day or two later, and he just came to me and said, hey, like, wouldn't this be cool if it was a podcast? And I was like, well, I mean, it would be cool if it was a podcast, but like, I think in my mind, I was a fan of Joe Rogan for many years, and like Fletcher Tate and Jocko and them, like circa like up to 2015 kind of thing. And so I was like, well, I like this show, and I like long form conversations, and I like having something that's natural. We're actually getting people's thoughts in a relaxed manner. So I was like, hey, well, why don't if we did this, why don't we do it like this kind of way, right? Because I like these shows, right? And that was kind of like how the conversation went between him and I, which just led into us figuring out, okay, well, let's try to figure out how do we build a podcast virtually, like when I'm in Canada and you're in America. And our first 20 episodes were pretty terrible. I still didn't have my Yeti mic, so I sound like I'm in a fishbowl the whole time. So I'm working off my MacBook.
I keep meaning to go back and find one of these episodes.
Oh, there's just it's terrible. It's all on Spotify or Apple. You can look on a catalog, but yeah, we just got better like week by week, and we got more used to each other. We got used to our format. We started getting a really good reputation in the industry as well, because we were getting senior people, junior people, ownership level people. We treated everyone the same. And my biggest thing was like, we're not going to take sponsorship for the show, because I didn't want to limit our ability to have freedom of speech. So if you came on the show, whether you wanted to swear, whether you wanted to pop off about someone, whether you wanted to insult the thing, whether you thought someone's software was shit, or someone was just not a good seller, or someone wasn't ethical, I wanted you to have the space to be able to say that. And so you take away the sponsorship money from direct episode recording, you kind of have that freedom for sure. But as the shows kind of progressed, what we were finding was, by season 3, we're now on season 4. Everything was just the same. Like you have these really cool security people come on, really accomplished, whatever. At the end of the day, it's all the same conversation. It's all the same thing. There's only so many issues you can deal with from a pure security standpoint, outside of someone having an individual drama or whatever it is. So that's why I was like, hey, well, I kind of brought it up to him like, hey, can we start looking at maybe going mainstream and bring in more non-tech mainstream people, and kind of talk about how what they do relates to tech? And he was thinking the exact same thing as well. He was getting bored with it too. And we're both getting super busy with our careers. So if we're going to spend our time doing this, it's got to be worthwhile.
Yeah.
And we made that pivot. And Jesus, it was super fun. I think for episode 1, I think I might have pulled off bringing us an actual like porn star to talk about online dating safety.
Nice.
So I think it just kind of like put
Kind of a
the
public service, and
well, I think it put the flag out there that just like, hey, like I kind of want all the weirdos and all the people that mainstream like corporate society would kind of reject. And
yeah, nice.
if they're doing something interesting and they have really good value and perspective, I want them to be heard. I want them to be platformed, So, and we brought on folks who work in psychology. We brought on this brilliant innovator, this lady who's down in California. I think she's at Stanford. And she's trying to design a safe way to use AI in psychotherapy, right? She's absolutely brilliant. It's exciting to talk to her. And brought on my friend Mark, who's a seller for a really good Canadian data governance startup called Cohash. So Mark works for them. He's their American rep. Mark played in the NFL for like, I don't know, 3 or 4 years or something like that, and worked for Dun and Bradstreet, worked for the Koch brothers, which Koch Industries is huge in America. He has massive, massive American industrial experience. And, it's like, dude, how'd you go from being a pro athlete playing on cable TV to doing cold calls?
Seriously.
Like how do you deal with that?
Yeah.
Getting independent journalists on who are actually looking at really good exposés. And I think now it's interesting and it's fun because, again, going back to the theme of my life, I get bored really like easily. And so I need to do things that make things not boring for me. And this was part of it. And I don't know what's going to happen with the show. We want to take it mainstream going into 2026. And I think we want to get a YouTube channel up and going. But I think for now, though, I have a really good time with George, and he's a super brilliant guy, and he's really, really respectable in his own right, his own career. I think he just found out he'll be speaking at RSA, I think, main stage with
Nice.
our friend Dr. Sarah to talk about mental health in our industry.
That's
And
great.
I'm really proud of him, and I'm proud to work with him. He's done a lot with the CISO Society. I actually helped him get into that job, and now he's taken that and it's taken off. And they built their value-added reseller Confide, which is like a CISO recommended reseller, which is kind of cool.
Very nice.
So they kind of remove toxic suppliers from their supply chain. And
Hmm.
I like the way that he does things and he does business. And him and I made somehow a really good team together just from being two really tired guys who just got sick of how dumb it felt.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
Wow, really cool. It's great to hear about the whole journey there. And then, so how are you sourcing like your guests these days? Is it mostly through your networks, which are huge, I'm sure.
Honestly, yeah, mostly through our networks. And then oftentimes we go do events or we both have like really good times traveling around doing things and we meet people and hey, that'd be really good. Or people come to us. Now, like I had a friend, I need to get this lady on next year, but she, as an example, she is a lady who is doing a lot of advocacy around protecting human copywriters from losing their jobs to AI
Mm-hmm.
because it's protecting human creativity and human value. And so it's just been tough because the schedule's been so packed this fall. But, I really want to get her on. And I know her through a friend in my hometown in Kingston, Ontario, who works in the art scene. And she's done some work in tech as well, but she's primarily an artist and does a lot of work advocating for artists. And so through her, I was able to connect with this individual, and this individual just reached out to me. It was like, hey, this is what I'm all about. And it's like, okay, cool. Well, that's a totally worthwhile angle that's on brand for us because we are still fundamentally always looking at the human relationship in tech.
Mm-hmm.
We might not be as pure security tech as we were before, but it's still about how are human beings interacting with tech and how can we encourage doing so in an ethical and emotionally safe manner. And so
Well,
that lines up.
and as long as tech keeps changing, people are going to continue to have to reevaluate their relationship with it, and the role of that within
Yes.
their own lives, right? And how it is impacting society at large.
Oh, absolutely.
So there's a lot to unpack there and room for a lot of different perspectives and conversations, I think. So really excited to hear about where your podcast is going. I think that'll be really interesting, and I encourage people to tune into that. And
I am so amazed that you or anyone even listens to it, to be honest with you. Like, honestly, like, to this day, George and I are still like, man, people actually listen to us. Like, we get thousands of listeners and followers and all this stuff. And I'm just like, I don't know, man. I'm not gonna lie to you. It's the end of my work day. I mean, there's a good chance I'm probably a little bit high even doing this recording because we record at like 8:30 on a Thursday night usually.
Uh-huh.
We're in Canada. It's legal here. It's legal in Ontario for anyone listening in the States. But like it's just, to me, it's just a relaxing way to get some energy out and just talk to someone really cool and that, I haven't had a chance to talk to, and it's not gonna give me a headache because it's not part of my work day. So
Yeah, there you go.
but I'm amazed and I'm very, very thankful that you or anyone listens to this show completely. I'm like very humbled by that.
Oh yeah. Well, and I wanted to ask you for people who are starting out in their podcast as well, who are anxious because, maybe no one's going to listen or have put a lot of work into it and no one's liked it or, what was your personal philosophy in terms of just dealing with that in terms of the social media feedback
Um,
and the anxiety of like, well, maybe I'm talking and no one's ever going to listen, right?
it's gonna sound weird, but I didn't care
Hmm.
because I didn't do it for other people. I didn't do it. I didn't want to be an influencer. I don't want to be an influencer.
Hmm.
I do it because I want to have interesting conversations with interesting people and talk about interesting ideas, and I enjoy doing that.
Hmm.
And I don't care if it's like literally like only 2 to 5 people that watch every single week or whatever. Like, as long as I got to have the experience of enjoying that conversation and it was genuine and the guest had a good time talking to me, I honestly, from my personal opinion, I feel very happy with that. I think it's a privilege to have a platform and have an opportunity to actually speak your mind and to connect with really cool people and to get what their ideas are. And I think if all you're doing is trying to play for numbers,
Hmm.
having a having a tech podcast probably isn't the thing, you know?
Yeah.
But again, like people do things for all sorts of
Sure they
reasons.
do.
I just know that my success has always come from not just in podcasting, but in general. I do things because I like them.
Mhm.
Like I focus on being true to myself more than anything else. It might rub people the wrong way. People might think I'm foolish or I'm an idiot, whatever. I, I I'm happy being me, and I think it's that authenticity is probably a lot is refreshing for a lot of people because
Mhm.
I'm not trying to be fake about anything.
Mhm.
And if I don't think something's cool or if I don't like something, then I just don't do it. So I don't like follow all the trends or whatever. And my hope is that if people get anything from me, if you want to ever call me an influencer or anything like that, it's just to figure out what does being yourself really mean
Mhm.
and how can you use that to make your ambitions happen.
Mhm.
Because I think if you have to sell yourself quite a bit to meet some kind of goal, it probably starts to feel really bad after a while.
Mhm.
It can become really toxic on your own
Yeah,
sense of id, your own sense of self.
I think so. Thanks for articulating that so nicely.
Oh, no
I think
worries.
that gives people something to be inspired by. I think in their journey. So thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Let's talk about one of your many projects, but one of your bigger projects probably that you're moving forward with right now that is really putting you in the role of an entrepreneur. So what are you doing?
Yeah, so it's a startup called VeridatAI, or Veridat. It's like VeridatAI, but like the AI at the end is capitalized, just
Mhm.
because we're not an AI company, we're a data company. But if you put the AI there, then investors like that. So we're just like, cool, we'll just capitalize the end of that. But really, it's a data exchange platform. So what we've managed to build is a secure, KYC compliant data exchange platform that does not take possession of your data at all at any point in time, but allows you to have a marketplace of buyers to sell, a given repository of data. And I think it's really exciting because this is us trying to democratize the commercialization of data for every individual company and then eventually every individual consumer. Um, to do so has a lot of challenges. Like we actually built a functional, production ready MVP. So yay.
Nice, congrats.
Yeah, and I'm super pumped about that because I, as a CISO, get pitched tons and tons of vaporware.
Mhm.
And I don't know how a lot of these companies end up getting money for like, oh, well, it's just a concept. And you're like, oh, so this UX that you're showing me here doesn't actually exist. You created something in Visio and now you're showing it to me. So it's like, No, but we have a functional thing that you can log in, you can test, you can use. And, it's just going through the struggles of, on one hand, being a technologist and actually building the cloud infrastructure and building the architecture and working with a team of developers that we have working with us, making sure that they build the product exactly the way we want designed. And then, just making sure that we have security by design across everything in our organization, because that's why you ask a CISO to be your CTO. And, just going through the games of funding, figuring out venture capital, figuring out, how many VCs and how many potential investors or LPs, like limited partners, do we have to talk to before we get the right kind of money for a proper seed round? Do we, have the right runway with this amount of money to actually do what we want to do? All these kind of questions. And it's a lot of like building stuff, falling flat on your face, rethinking it, going back to market, changing your presentation, changing whatever product, changing this configuration, changing this API. I had to go through the process of re-educating myself on Python, like late at night. I had to re-educate myself on JS. I had to re-educate myself on basic coding. I had to re-educate myself on basic network architecture. Like to go back to the fundamentals to make sure that I am building a thing for our team that is actually like as secure as possible from the start, and that we have minimal risk, because like once this thing really goes to market, we've already got a bunch of letters of intent signed with large organizations. We're in talks with certain other groups. We're under NDA with a lot of this. I don't want to reveal a lot of it, but we have opportunities to really make some headlines and to hopefully close on a multiple multi-million-dollar seed round. And we're already potentially playing into some big kind of RFPs that are nation state level that could be worth hundreds of millions, and some other programs with the US government that could be worth multiple billions as well. And I think we're uniquely positioned to actually offer our platform and our services for that. So it's really exciting. And the only thing that scares me more than failing is actually succeeding, if that makes any sense.
What makes you say that?
Well, if we actually pull this off and we get this money and we have the mandates to move forward, I got to build this organization. I got to run it, and I have to make sure that it does what we have been, promised it will do. And
Yeah, I know, it's that
it's
feeling of like, "Oh my god, I got what I wanted, now what?"
it's honestly it's literally it's a oh shit now what
Yeah,
kind of moment.
yeah,
And I'm very privileged to be potentially facing that,
yeah,
but at the same time, I don't think I know in my life, like I enjoy the challenge that we're doing. I enjoy my co-founders. They're like Mike and Corey are great guys. I love hanging out with them. They're super cool. The network of advisors that we have are great. Making the friends that we've made in this journey has been awesome. The opportunities are endless, and getting to experience a lot of cool things that we want to do with that. For me, it's just my overall life goal is like I'm 38 going on 39 years old. I want to retire by 45.
mhm,
I want to retire from, like, I'll still sit on hopefully some boards and I'll have investment money and that kind of dividend revenue coming in. But I was serious about what I was saying that dream was earlier, just owning that beach, owning that bar, being able to live in paradise. These are not high revenue generating things.
yeah,
So you kind of have to live off of the investments that you make while you're still in the game. And, I think I'm lucky enough to be able to pull this off in this economy in this day and age. And that's really what kind of drives everything, is being able to be young enough to earn that kind of freedom, to be able to enjoy my life and not, just be a slave to work in this techno feudalism until I'm 65 or 70 or until I die. Just working, 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 doing something I hate, making money for something or someone else.
yeah,
So I think if you understand like me and my life and achieving that escape velocity, that freedom, that's all I ever try to do. That's the only thing that motivates me more than anything else. So I hope that maybe this startup is a path to getting there. And if this one doesn't work out, then I'll find something else, and I'll just keep swinging until I get there.
That's awesome. I love seeing that dream. I can almost see it. I can see sort of the YouTube video that you're gonna post online a few years from now. It'll be you like, I've done it. You're gonna be just chilling at like this
Just
beautiful island that you
it's
own.
at this it's gonna be like, I'm gonna show you how to mix this cocktail. And that's if you see me doing that in some cabana bar, then you know I've made it.
And you'll be like, I gathered these ingredients today from my garden. I like it on Tuesdays because
Please. Yes. Yes. Okay.
the sun shines really brightly.
Oh my
You
god.
really see how beautiful like the ocean is.
Talk about like, okay, I'm gonna get called out, but like this might happen, dude. We're like 10 years later, we're gonna pick up this video. Like, look, Amy, call me on it.
That'll be good. There's the video. But so just to step back a bit for the audience. So my audience is very cross sector, right? Because
Okay.
I'm trying to cross pollinate ideas and technologies and things.
Yeah.
So tell us a bit more about the need that the startup is answering.
Really, it's about utilization of data, because a lot of organizations don't actually, first of all, a lot of organizations don't even know if they own their own data, which is like part of the problem, but they don't actually see the utility in it. And I think, I look at some of our manual deal use cases.
Mhm.
We can take a look at like an example where one of my co-founders is based in the Permian Basin down in Texas, which is like one of the largest oil fields in America, which is one of the largest oil fields in the world. And there was an organization that had, well, we'll say years and years, decades worth of oil well maintenance data, just maintenance logs, right? They don't think that's worth anything. It's just maintenance logs,
Mm.
right? I mean, you look at janitorial logs, the same type of thing, just for a large well, and you're not going to think that data is worth anything, but you have to have it in case something happens. You got to be able to do an investigation, whatever. And then there's all these companies that are now trying to build automation for those manual industrial control systems, right?
Mhm.
They don't have any data to train their offering on. So where's that data? It's in the hands of what would be the end client.
Mhm.
But the end client doesn't realize that that data has any value, and they don't know where to begin looking for that data. So we ended up acting as brokers to actually facilitate kind of a deal, right?
Mhm.
Which kind of was a eureka moment of like, wait a minute, this is probably a thing across the board.
Mhm.
And then you realize in talking to different organizations and governmental departments in the US and Canada that, there's a lot of need for research and optimization of data, but there isn't a safe and secure way to acquire that data.
Mhm.
And there isn't even any sort of path by which you can ask people, like, where would we find this data? Or do we, like, a lot of organizations need the data, but they don't even know what they need.
Mhm. Yeah.
So they don't know where to begin.
Mhm.
So then we realized that this whole thing people have been saying for a decade now, like, oh, data is new oil. What does that actually look like?
Mhm.
So then we're really just coming up with a way of actualizing what data is the new oil really is, and that we're building a marketplace and we're building a platform, and that we're helping people optimize revenue based on data that they already have and own, instead of letting data brokers illegally collect it and sell it on, not their behalf, but sell it for their own purposes. And I think by building this marketplace and by building the control for individual organizations and eventually people to be able to sell that data and control the ownership and the licensing and profitability from it based on their consent, I think that's a value proposition that, it's going to be valid for decades.
Absolutely. I think most organizations probably are starting off with like a faint idea that data is valuable in some way, really.
Yeah,
To your point around, not knowing exactly what it looks like or, how clean their data might be, for instance,
exactly.
or how valuable it might be or what those.
Which is why we that's where any sort of use of AI comes in, is doing that validation, right? Where you have like a local validation agent where at no point in time are we actually in custodianship of that data. Like, you're putting the data in a repo that you possess.
Mhm.
We're just scanning to make sure it is what you say it is.
Mhm.
We're providing value based on that. And for the buyers, we're allowing them a chance to preview that data and to make sure that this is what you want. And there's a period where the transaction gets put in escrow, and and then you're able to move forward. So I think by creating this trust-based marketplace, we're able to really go to market and provide people with a real option when it comes to understanding how they can get value out of their data and how, they can find a safe way to transact it, to ensure that they're getting their value without sacrificing their privacy or the integrity of that data that they possess.
And is there something to be said for enabling, better kind of ethical conversations or considerations around the data based on having a more sophisticated marketplace?
Yeah, because again, like we already have checks and balances in terms of our design where it detects and blocks out CSAM data, right? Like child sexual exploited material or any sort of data that's already copyrighted elsewhere. It's being able to ensure that you actually own the data that you are trying to sell, right? And that it can't be just easily replicated. So I think that validation process, that auditable report, that's where there's a lot of value because that's the kind of thing that a lawyer could take to court. And my one of my co-founders is he's actually in the CEO seat, Mike McLaughlin. He I'd say is probably in the top 5 for technology lawyers in America today. So when it comes to having the right legal mind and legal infrastructure in place, I think we're in really good hands under Mike's leadership, and I think our customers are going to be in really good hands under Mike's leadership as well.
Amazing. Well, I wish you well, with that. That's incredible. It's a very exciting thing. Can I ask, is your founding team kind of made up of members from Canada as well as folks from the US?
Yeah,
Kind of international kind of.
it's 3 of us. So it's Mike and Corey, who are both U.S. naval veterans, and Mike was actually a veteran of the NSA as well. Was a longtime senior counterintelligence officer, and Corey actually used to work protecting nuclear sites and that kind of thing. So, but now, I mean, Corey has spent the last 10 plus years being a leader in cyber insurance and actually built the cyber practice for a large insurance provider. And obviously, Mike, going from the Navy and the NSA, now he is at one of the largest law firms, institutional law firms in America. He's at Buchanan. And then myself, I think the 3 of us together, it's a really interesting team because we're all veterans,
Mm.
and I'm the Canadian on the team, but there's I'm never made to feel any different. I've been friends with Mike for a couple of years now, and he's known Corey for a little while, and I think really yes, the military thing, the veteran thing, I think that really brings us together.
Nice.
But at day's end, these are my friends. And it's still it's us. It's hanging out with my friends, doing this crazy thing, and we have a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And it's not work when you enjoy the people you do things with, and you all believe in what you're doing. And then it's work. Like trust me, when you talk to me at 2 a.m. and I'm trying to figure out why this API won't function after I've implemented it, yeah, it's work at that moment. But outside of that, I just really enjoy the ride with them, and I enjoy watching them do really good things too. And we're all really mutually supportive of each other, and it's a cool, healthy environment. And in spite of the fact that there may be some weird geopolitical tension between Canada and America, I don't feel it with them. If anything, we hope our success actually helps drive kind of a message of unity because we're each other's allies.
Nice.
And we have been defending one another and doing business together for decades, and there's really no functional reason why that should change.
I love that. Thank you.
No worries.
Looking now at the startup kind of landscape in Canada, right? I know that you're a big fan of helping, but you're also someone who has been pitched to you many, many times, as you mentioned as well. Where do you think we can go to kind of help to stimulate kind of startups and innovation and scaling, which is what we're trying to do in Canada right now?
I think that part of the problem is we need to get more Canadian investors who are willing to invest in Canadian startups. And I think we need to have Canadian organizations and client-side companies that are willing to be first adopters. Because I think a big part of the problem is you might build some really awesome Canadian technology, but a lot of organizations don't want to spend the risk on buying you first when, why would I buy you when I can just buy IBM or get Microsoft or, I can justify this to my board. Because if your technology doesn't work, or if you had some security issue and then you became a supply chain risk. I lose my job for picking you instead of going with Microsoft, who oftentimes gets hacked on a monthly basis, but it's Microsoft.
Right.
So you'll never get in trouble for that.
Right.
Right. So I think the attitude around Canadian innovation on the client side needs to change, and we need to get more investment money. And we also need to focus on teaching founders how to tell their stories and tell their narratives. Because, like, I don't know about you, but when I hear a lot of founders pitch, like, there is almost this smug sense of entitlement, like, oh, you should get my thing because I know my thing's the best.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like, okay, but you haven't actually addressed my problem statement, or you haven't told me a story that conveys why your solution could help solve problems that I might actually have. So I think if you get more founders that, I don't know if it's Toastmasters or if there's specific training that we could offer them, just like how to sell,
Mm-hmm.
how to sell,
Mm-hmm.
and I think something that benefited me when I occasionally have to do like sales type things, I used to work consulting as well and have to sell services. Outside of like my professional life, I had spent years and years doing like grassroots like organizing for like community politics and stuff like that. So, I had knocked on thousands and thousands of doors between like I want to say like 2000 and 2008, 2009 to like essentially like 2020, 2021. So like that kind of thing.
You were knocking on doors?
Knocking on doors,
Yeah.
phone calls, running issue campaigns, like that
Wow.
kind of thing. So for a lot of those cases, like you're going to go into communities that are not going to necessarily be on side with whatever you're representing,
Mm-hmm.
but you still got to knock on that door and you still got to have that conversation. You still have to potentially try to present an argument to convince people to rethink their positions if they're willing to have that conversation. And it's kind of scary and sometimes can be really harsh.
Yeah.
And you have to get used to that. And I think, between doing that and I worked in the nightclub industry for like close to 10 years
What were you
combined.
doing?
I was a bouncer and an occasional DJ and bartender.
Really?
Yeah.
Neat.
So, but again, when you work in the service industry, like you have to get used to talking to people.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to, be able to read people and have emotional intelligence and move quickly. I think those kinds of human skills are really, really important to succeed as a founder, to succeed in business generally.
Yeah.
And I'd say more than my degree, like my time working in that field and my time like doing all that volunteer stuff, I think that's what enabled me to grow in my career more than anything else. And it's probably what's going to enable me to succeed as a founder as well, because I can sell the thing that we're doing. I can be the technologist, but then if I have to do a call with an investor, I can sell us just as well,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that's a skill set that I think a lot of Canadian founders are lacking. And I hope that maybe I can try to influence some people to figure out, hey, how do I sell my story better?
Mm-hmm.
Because that'll go a long way for them to get their money and to build their market and to eventually convince these boards and these executives on the client side in Canada that, hey, taking a shot on a Canadian startup, even though no one else has already done so, it might actually be worthwhile.
Nice. Nice. Yeah, for me as well, a lot of my earlier experiences in terms of like the services industry and selling and also being rejected was something that really helped
Oh
me
yeah.
become a lot more resilient and the ability to learn from those rejections and take the feedback.
I think
It's never like super easy, but
I
it's
think
so
honestly, people are terrified of being rejected nowadays. I think it's a career limiting problem that they have. You got to get used to it. Like look at what Ruby does. We work in online dating, right? You work in dating,
yeah, right.
right? So people get shot down. And like, I was a bouncer for a long time, and I used to tell my friends sometimes, or right, guys I knew, like maybe not necessarily my friends or acquaintances, they have a problem like trying to talk to this girl or convince this girl to go out with them or whatever. And you just be like, hey man, like just quit living in your own head about it. Like the worst you can do is say no.
Right.
It's just says that's fine. Then move on. Have a good night. Have fun. Like, if you have a fun attitude and it's just like, I'm just having a good time. And if you don't want to spend time with me, like, that's okay. I'll tell you what, you're more likely than not to attract her with that kind of attitude than some weird, like, you want to go out next week? Like, just be chill. Just be chill. It's okay. The worst someone can say is no to you.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Just keep at it and keep being the best version of you. And eventually, like, people will start saying yes. It's the same thing in tech. It's the same thing in your career, whether you're a practitioner, whether you're a seller, or whether you're a founder. People are going to say no to you. People are going to reject you. But if you keep doing what you're trying to do and don't let that deter you, and you put your best effort forth into it, eventually it turns to yes.
It's true. It's true. Yeah. Somebody told me recently, like, the fortune is in the follow-up and then getting
Yes.
that yes, right?
Yes.
So we were talking recently about one way that I know you'd like to see founders improve with in terms of pitching
Yeah.
and telling their story. And from my experience in venture capital a long time ago now, I mean, I would say the same thing. And it's always something that you work on, and it's a practice, and you can't see yourself as done
Hmm.
at it. Maybe you can talk a little bit about what we're planning to do next year.
Yeah, so for our friends Mark and Bill who run the annual CIS conference, which is a very big deal in Ottawa. It's the was it Cybersecurity and Identity Summit?
Summit. I think
Yes,
that's what
that's what it is.
Oh,
The
you want
Cybersecurity and Identity.
to
I can't use this cut. So, yeah, but for the CIS Cybersecurity and Identity Summit in Ottawa next year, we want to run a Canadian wolf's den, which instead of a dragon's den, the Canadian version is going to be a wolf's den.
I like that.
And really, it's the same concept. We want to have a bake off where we allow Canadian startup founders to come in and pitch their ideas. And we haven't quite figured out the prize yet. But I do know that one thing we want to offer the founders is just some support, and we'll celebrate and we'll promote those who actually, the winners of this, and then the folks who are really good at pitching it, and the ones who need a little bit of help. We want to be able to identify that and offer them that help. And we want to line up a panel of real CIOs and CISOs who are the kind of decision makers that they'll eventually need to convince to buy their product. And I think getting them through the exercise of pitching their product, it allows the audience at the conference to see what's happening in the innovation space. It allows them a chance to pitch to, a live audience of potential prospects. And it allows us as leaders to identify folks who have potential and to maybe talk to them and connect with them and try to help them along their path. And I think that's a big part of the journey. And we make the experience fun, we make it entertaining. And I think as long as everyone has a good time and figures out how they can get something out of it, beyond just money, but actually like trying to improve their ability to succeed in their overall goal, I think we'll have done a good thing for the founders, because this is an event, as much as it is like we want to put on a good event for the folks attending CIS. We want to give those founders an opportunity to pitch to relevant audiences and to improve their ability to sell themselves. And I think that's ultimately why I want to get involved.
I think that's great, George. Thanks for saying that. And as someone who's a founder, yourself, as someone who is working the space on the other side of things, on the procurement side of things, and then also as someone who has been to a lot of these kind of pitch events as well, I think that you can never kind of practice too much or worry too much about improving, and you can never overly build your network in this area
Of
either,
course,
right? So
you're right on the money.
it's I think a great opportunity for folks to come and meet folks and get some profile and stay current and just continue to build our ecosystem here in Canada as well.
Yeah, and hang out with Amy and I, because it's pretty awesome to hang out with Amy and I. I'd say that's a big thing.
I don't think there's any money required as a prize, really. The prize is
No,
hanging out with us.
it's pretty cool.
Maybe put everyone on the podcast. You never know, right?
Could you imagine?
Reach the world. I've got like 3 followers. It's gonna be great.
Honestly, though, that could be part of the prize package, is
It could
that
be.
you get featured on a podcast episode. We're like, hey, like, you want to talk about your product? You want to lie like a bigger audience?
That's true. I get pitched all the time by people who want to
I'm
profile
just saying
companies on
it's worthwhile.
the I think we're building it as we talk about it, guys. I love
You
that.
mean like most of our careers, you're building the ship while you're on the highway? Yeah, it's pretty much what we do already. Yeah.
That's right. I love it. So stay tuned for that. And it's going to be a great event, and looking forward to it, George. Looking forward to working with you on it.
Yeah, for sure. We're having fun.
Yeah. Great. So, as we wrap up, the podcast, do you have any thoughts for folks as they look out towards 2026? I think 2025 was a big year for a lot of people to digest, and I think people are going to be digesting it over the holidays. The other weekend, I had a weekend where I went and I just was involved in music the
Nice.
entire weekend. I sang as part of like this
Yeah,
this event, and then I just watched this other event, and I didn't think about AI for like 40 hours. It was amazing.
that's so awesome.
But it just there's a lot to digest, I guess is my point. And then looking at, the year past and the year to come, do you have any last reflections to leave people with?
Well, first of all, like, I congratulate you for having a weekend where you mentally went out and touched grass, which
I
is
did,
great.
exactly, exactly.
Um, I think the biggest thing is don't focus on like AI or quantum or this or that, the other thing. The biggest thing is figure out within yourself if what you're doing is what makes you happy.
Mm,
And if it's not, figure out what that thing that would make you happy is and start working towards that. And whether that's a different role within your organization or, going from incident response to maybe going into compliance or whatever it is, like that kind of thing. I think what I think what we have to fight for with economic conditions as hard as they are right now is we have to figure out what allows us to find our greatest sense of personal satisfaction,
mm.
what allows us to be the best to ourselves, the best to our families, the best to our partners, the best to our friends. I don't have anything groundbreaking in terms of career advice. Like in terms of career advice, it's just really, like I was saying earlier in the episode, like be willing to perform as best as you can when there's no audience at all, because someday you will have an audience and then it'll actually matter. But I think for the sake of advice for 2026 in general, it's just figure out what being happy means to you and try to do everything you can to make that a manifested reality. Because I think that's the only way we're going to get through all the turmoil that we're going to going into this year.
I think that's wonderful advice, George, and it resonates with me. Just, this past year I started this podcast and I realized that I loved it and wanted to keep going with it. And that's one of the things that I'm going to keep going with in 2026 and build my life so that it all fits. So I appreciate that. And I encourage everyone else to look for what those things are that will keep them grounded and will bring them joy in their next year and in the years to come. So thanks so much for your time today, George. It's been a lot of fun. I've really enjoyed learning a lot about you as well personally, and hearing about what you're up to and what your perspectives are, and hearing the lessons learned that you've shared today too. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm happy I didn't bore you and I hope I didn't bore the audience. So have a good one.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, so much for whether you've tuned in to a short or an entire episode of Wired for Change, or if you're one of my regular listeners and you are driving change yourself, you're trying to make things happen, you're seeing what's happening, and you're supporting others, and you care about public impact. I really appreciate the time that you've spent with me and with my guests. And I thank each and every one of my guests as well from the bottom of my heart. You have trusted us to carry your message forward, and to trust us with your voices is something that is amazing. And so I appreciate that. I wish everyone a wonderful end of year and a wonderful start to 2026. Thank you again.